Our next guest we're pleased to have on is Bruce Perry, a former Maryland running back, 2002 ACC Offensive Player of the Year, and a former player of Mike Locksley. Bruce, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
No problem. I think a lot of people forget I'm the last Doak Walker finalist that Maryland has ever had.
There you go. You add one more credential to his long list of it, and we can kind of start there. Bruce, take us through. When you had that season in 2002. Now that you're, not to say it's been a couple years since that
No,
happened,
go
but
ahead and say I'm old. It's all right.
um, what's like the biggest thing you look back on? Is it a particular moment? Is it like because athletes they talk about kind of getting in that like almost flow state of like throughout a season where everything is just you get a routine and you're just in it. Is there anything that stands out to you that you remember specifically?
It's funny that you asked me that question because another one of our Terps, Jafar Williams, is currently down there in Vanderbilt handling receivers. And we were just having a conversation, and I was telling him, man, I miss the grind. I miss, watching film, studying my opponent, getting great game plans and going out and executing. I miss being around the guys, day in and day out, working for a common goal. Um, and then, performing on Saturday, man, it's nothing like hearing the roar, which used to be Bird Stadium. It's nothing like hearing those people chanting your name and you going out and performing for the masses. So, you know, as a whole, I miss the entire process, and more importantly, I miss the guys. I miss being in that locker room. Like we had a special bond that we have until this day, um, and that never goes away. Once a Terp, always a Terp.
Bruce, at your time at Maryland, you faced some injuries, struggled with some injuries there, but your sophomore year, Maryland fans really got to get a glimpse at who you really are as a rusher. Rushed for over 1,200 yards. Looking back now, do you have any doubt that you would have gotten that all-time rushing record if injuries hadn't gotten in the way?
Oh, no question about it. I think Ralph Friedgen and I talk, often, and one of the things that he wrote in his book and one of the things that he preaches to this day is, had we been able to keep me healthy, it's no doubt in his mind that I would have had that rushing record, and not only that, been considered probably the greatest back in Maryland history. I think what I was able to provide is versatility. Um, 2001, I was second leading receiver. I had almost 600 yards receiving on top of 1,200 yards rushing. I think I might have finished about sixth or eighth in total yardage that year. Um, so without a doubt, if we would have been able to do that, I would have definitely that record would have I had my sights on it. But make no mistake, I spent 2 years behind Lamont Jordan. I know the greatness that he had. I know what he was able to accomplish because I was actually there. I watched him rush for 307 yards against Virginia. I had 47 yards myself in that game. So, I'm in great company.
Take me through as we, think back to the early 2000s in College Park. What was life kind of like? What was the life of a football player playing at Maryland in those days?
Um, completely different. Completely different. You got to understand during those times, we were known for being a basketball school. We weren't winning on the football field. Um, And so, we weren't the most popular guys on campus. Winning brings all that. It brings the notoriety, it brings the attention. We weren't winning at the time, and Ralph Friedgen came into a program that was rich in talent. I think Mike Locksley was the recruiting coordinator at the time. He and Ron Vanderlinden did a great job of assembling talent. I think where we fell short during the Vanderlinden eras is that we did not know how not to lose. We weren't taught how not to lose. We did not focus meticulously on the little things. And when Ralph came into our lives and into the program, um, he instilled just day in and day out, punching the clock, grinding the clock, knowing what it felt like to actually put in the work to go out and win. And it paid dividends. It paid dividends from the start, and guys bought into the program, bought into the concept, and we were able to get things rolling early.
You talked about some of the kind of notoriety that comes with winning, and then on the offset, I think there's some frustration that comes with losing, and that's kind of what Maryland football's been doing this year. It's been a tough start to the season, dropping another game, and probably one of the worst losses since Locksley's taken over. As an alum, what were you thinking watching the game on Saturday?
Um, I got to speak very, very, I have to put on some gloves and speak with kid gloves because it's personal to me, because I understand what it takes, what these kids, these young men are putting into the game. I think, honestly speaking, what I'm looking for is the fight. I'm looking to see guys fight. I'm looking to see guys compete. I'm looking to see guys not willing to accept defeat down to the last whistle. And it just seems to me like you know it was deflating. It was deflating for us to see because we know these guys have talent. We know they're better than what we're seeing. But we also have to take into account, situational football and the things that are going on during the game. Take those into account. But as viewers of it, it's not the easiest thing to watch.
Yeah, and I think a lot, this season has brought out a lot of frustration with Coach Locksley and kind of the struggles I think he's had as a coach this year. What's your message to fans? I know you guys are really close, but just in your honest opinion as a football watcher and football former player, what's your thoughts on his coaching this season, and how do you think he's going to kind of pull them out?
Yeah, it's very disheartening when you've got a team that's trying to fight and the support isn't there, when the stands are somewhat empty just because it's not a marquee USC Michigan type of game. We've got to understand that our guys need support, whether we're playing the School of the Blind or whether we're playing Alabama. You know what I mean? That's number one. Number two, like I said, in the NIL era, some of these Big Ten schools have a very large cupboard and a very large cachet to be able to not only go out and acquire great talent and great players, but also keep the players that they have in house. And Mike Locksley has been beating on the drums, trying to gather and rally support. But it's been difficult for him, and we try as alumni to do what we can. But, I think we're in a different era than what I was in because there was no NIL. You know what I mean? There was not that added element of contention. And, under different circumstances, Ralph Friedgen was able to, rally the troops internally. He was able to, rally the fans externally. And we were able to do some pretty amazing things. So I think we have to look at this from an overall standpoint and really ask the question: have we been doing everything that we can to make Maryland a power in the Power Five? I mean, if you look at things logistically, Maryland is in one of the largest media markets. We have some of the greatest things to offer as an area. The campus has pretty much been transformed. We should be able to capitalize off of that on all fronts. We should be in that conversation with the Michigans, with the Ohio States. We should be in that conversation just because of our geographic location. Not to mention the amount of talent that's in the state. We should be there, but it's been tough, and I know it's been tough for Locks. He's doing the best he can with what he has, and I'm here to support him in any way, shape, or form. I want you to understand that once you're a Terp for life. Locks lives and bleeds Maryland. He always has, and we all want to see him succeed the way we know he can. We all want to see Maryland live up to the potential that we know it can.
Having been around Loxley as a player, what do you imagine he's doing right now as a coach to kind of try to rally the troops? What do you think his message is in the locker room after that game, during practices? And what about Lox being around him as a player? Do you think he can, why do you think he can right this ship and right this season?
Well, two things. One of the things, he's being brutally honest. You know, players respect that. He's going to let us know exactly where we went wrong. He's also going to let us know the things that, the things that went right. But he's not going to sugarcoat anything. And at the end of the day, last Saturday, we just weren't good enough. We weren't good enough. Do we have the potential? Absolutely we do. But potential means nothing until you go out there and do it. I think that's the general message. The general message is going to be, we're going to have to put on our hard hats, get to work this week, and figure out the way to right this ship. He's gonna show that he has belief in his guys, that he believes that he has the right guys wearing those uniforms and those helmets. But at the end of the day, they've got to go out there and perform.
Just have one more about the current team. You mentioned the fans and kind of needing to be there when it's good and when it's bad, but I was at the game Friday and the student section was completely packed. It's been relatively filled, and I think that there's been games where it has been filled and it's been, very good environments, and Maryland has typically lost those games. So what do you say to fans who feel the kind of frustration of like the same loss is continuously happening for the same reasons? And when I do go, I'm not getting, what I'm putting in.
I'll put it to you like this. We are all in this together. Win or lose. We're all in this together. You guys wear the colors. You guys wear the logo the same way we do. We don't have a choice as Terrapins on when we show up and when we don't. Win or lose. These guys are out there. They're not out there trying to lose. Let's be clear. No one's trying to lose. We're all in this to win. In sport, in every game, there's a winner and a loser, right? These past few weeks, it hasn't been going our way. It doesn't mean we don't still need the support, because we do. The same way in life, when, we fall short, we make mistakes, you still want your supporters to be there for you, to cheer you on, to motivate you. And listen, make no mistake, I'm not bashing our fans. I will never do that. That is never going to happen to me. You will never hear me do that. I'm trying to spark and ignite a flame that resonates, because it matters to us as players when we come out, before kickoff and we see a packed house. The student section is always lit and live, make no mistake about it. But the students are not the only fans we have here. The students have consistently poured out and supported us, and we are grateful and thankful to that. But they're not the only ones that come out and support. We need everyone. We need the entire state to be there for us the way the entire state of Michigan is there for Michigan. The way the entire state of Pennsylvania is there for Penn State and Pittsburgh. Whether Penn State wins or loses, when have you seen that place empty or close to empty, or even not even having a seat not sat in? It doesn't happen, because they're diehard, and I know we have diehards. I know it's tough times. I know, it hasn't gone our way. It doesn't mean we stop. This show doesn't stop. We still need you. We need your support. It is vital and crucial. It is what keeps us going.
Seems like they might want to hire you to hype up the fans once in a while. I'm sure that's music to the ears of.
Listen, man, I bleed red. You see what I'm wearing today. This wasn't by choice. Like, my closet is full of Maryland stuff because I bleed this. You know what I mean? I sacrifice my body, my life, and my time for this university and for this program, and it doesn't just stop when I lose my eligibility. I'm going to always be this way. I'm going to be that way come Saturday for homecoming. You know what I mean? This is what it means, and what I think is the foundation of Maryland football, the building blocks are those years from 2001 to 2004. If you go back in history, I know a lot of you probably either were on bottles or weren't born yet. But the foundation of what we have today are those 3 seasons. Those 3 seasons we left the University of Maryland, we left the football program in the best state that it had ever been in. We won, I want to say, 33 games in 3 years, on pace and on par with the Michigans, not even Michigan because we were better than Michigan, on par with the Miamis, with the Oklahomas. We were there with them. We were the team that blew Tennessee out 30-something to 3. We left the state of the program where we intended it to be when we all got there in 2000 or 1999. We are yearning for those days to come. We know we've got the right captain of the ship. Mike Locksley is the only man for this job. He's the only guy for it. He's built for it. And this is just athletics. It's football. But we also got to take into account the logistics behind it. We also have to take into account the things that are needed in today's day and age of football and today's day and age of athletics, period. And really do a self-assessment on, are we doing everything we can as a fan base and as a whole to make certain that we put out a winner? It's not easy. I tell Locks all the time, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Because the amount of pressure to perform, like most people don't really understand, it's more cutthroat than corporate America. And I've been fortunate enough to succeed at this level and go on to play at the highest level. So I have a little different understanding. We all want the same thing, period. We all want the same thing.
I wanted to ask you about your experience on that early 2000s roster. Actually, take it back a little bit before then. Coming out of high school, you only took 2 official visits, one of them being Maryland. As soon as you committed to Maryland, you had schools knocking on your door, Michigan included, asked you to kind of reconsider that decision. What was it about Maryland that made it so enticing for you as a high schooler to commit there and come to College Park?
100% right, and I'm finally glad somebody got the story correct. Michigan begged me to just take the visit, and I am a man of my word. When I make a commitment, I stick to it. That's number one. Number two, when I took my visit, I only took 2 visits. That was Maryland and Pitt. I was not a guy who liked to travel. I did not like getting on planes. Wasn't my deal. When I got here, it felt like home. It felt like home. And really, the person that made it feel like home was Mike Locksley. He made it feel like home. He was upfront and honest. He was recruiting. He had 2 running backs, myself and Mike Kitchen, also from Pennsylvania. Ended up going to Georgia Tech and being with Ralph Friedgen. But he was upfront. We're only recruiting 1 running back, and it's going to end up being one of you. And my main focus was the fact that I was only 2 hours away from home, that my parents and my family can come and see me play, that I could play early, which I did. I played as a freshman. And my father envisioned college for me, walking through the gates and being somewhere that I didn't have to leave. And that's exactly what happened. For the first 2.5 years, I never left campus. Didn't even go to Bentley's. I was so locked in. Funny story, I didn't go to Bentley's until the end of my junior year. And when I got to the doors at Bentley's, somebody grabbed me and said, I got to watch what I say here. You don't ever come out. I'm buying everything for you tonight. You know what I mean?
Hey,
So, yeah,
how was your
you know.
time? How was your time, man?
Oh Lord,
Hey,
we can't talk about this on air, brother.
you're
But
next week's homecoming. You got to run it back.
listen, I'll probably be at Bentley's for sure.
We're talking about right your early kind of playing days at Maryland, your time at Maryland.
Hmm.
Talk me through what life was like after, right? You go to the NFL, you go to the Eagles for 2 years. Just take me through kind of your life and career after that.
So, I was actually in Philly for three years. My rookie year, we ended up going to the Super Bowl. But before then, I'm sitting in offensive install, and to my right is T.O. He's laying there with a pillow, about to go to sleep. And to my left is Donovan McNabb. And for around 2 seconds, I was like, holy smokes. But then I realized I was sitting in the seat and I belonged. And all that starstruck went out the window and I went to work. I will say I have never been more prepared a day in my life than what I was when I got to the Philadelphia Eagles. Um, Learning Ralph's offense, which is a pro style offense. Andy Reid's playbook is literally the size of 2 phone books. And I don't even know if you guys even know what phone books look like. But um, very, very large. And I was able to pick up on things that other people couldn't. Guys from the Big Ten at that time um, had a lot of trouble picking up the West Coast offense, and I didn't. And that's only because Mike Locksley taught me very well on how to compartmentalize and how to learn. Funny story is, um, my senior year, when Mike Locksley left and went to Florida, um, I was devastated. I was heartbroken. He'll tell you. Like, I sat there and I cried for about a good 30 minutes. And I left the complex. I went back to my room and Ralph called me back to the office. And, he told me, he said, look, I'm trying to get him back. And I'm like, it's not going to happen. But just know whoever you bring in here they're not going to be able to coach me because I've learned everything that I need to learn. And my next coach was Bill O'Brien. And so I get into the meeting room with Bill O'Brien. Bill has gone on to coach with Tom Brady and Penn State and the Houston Texans. But that's the first thing Bill O'Brien said to me. There's nothing I can teach you. You've been to the top of the mountain. I just need you to be here for the young guys. And that's the culture that we created at Maryland. We never shied away from giving information to the younger guys. It was always a teaching moment. And it started in that running back room. We knew at that time wins and losses went through running the ball, went through the running back room. And so we kind of carried on the legacy and the foundation that was left to us, from the older guys, from Lamont Jordans, from, the Buddy Rogers, going all the way back to Charlie Wysocki. I'm a historian of Maryland football. I know everyone, because I want to be able to pay homage, and I wanted to be able to pay homage to the guys who came before me with my play.
You mentioned it. Friedgen obviously kind of created that culture, and I want to ask you a pretty direct question. How much do you think the firing of Ralph Friedgen set back Maryland football?
Set us back a decade. Set us back a decade, for sure. A lot of Eagles were involved in that decision. I think the firing of Ralph and the hiring of Edsel set us back a decade. Edsel literally came into a house that Ralph built and tore it apart. He tore all of the history that we created. He tore them all off the walls. All of the all academic ACC pictures that were going around in every meeting room, he threw in the trash. He threw everything that had to do with Ralph Friedgen out. And Kevin Glover had to call me, and you can verify this, to come and get some of those things. Those are treasures. That was history. And I housed some of those things for some of our former players. It set us back a decade, for sure.
How much did that frustrate you as an alumni and a former player to see that happen?
A lot of guys did. If it wasn't for Dwight Galt, who was our strength and conditioning coach, ended up going to Penn State with Franklin, with James. If it wasn't for him, nobody would have come back because of the state that Maryland football was left in under Edsel. Um, he he really gutted something that was built. He tore it apart, and it made a lot of guys wary on even contributing and coming back, like myself included. You know, there was no one that we recognized at the University of Maryland and in our football complex. It was almost like, you know, there was an imposter, somebody imposing the greatest coach that Maryland has ever seen.
No, I think that's important to bring up, and I think that's the question I think Maryland fans kind of ponder.
Yeah,
It's,
it set us back a decade for sure.
yeah. And I want to kind of, when you talk about Ralph and yours relationship, I know you told me that he's wasn't necessarily the most emotional guy when he was coaching, and you guys have kind of created that bond now. But when you were going through those injuries, and I can just imagine you get to kind of a place as a player where, especially in the early 2000s, that wasn't necessarily the coach player relationship with most coaches, right? Is kind of that emotional aspect to it. Do you think that if your injuries had happened now, like how do you think it would have changed how you handled it, or how you went about it?
Um, different area, different era, different time. There's a lot more at these guys' disposal from a mental health standpoint. Mental health was not a primary focus back then. Um, there's a lot of changes that have gone in time. You know how remember I went through two-a-days. These guys do not. Um, there are a lot of time restrictions that come into play in today's game. Um, and it is definitely different. It definitely I almost beg to say, you know, they're not really built the way we were built. We were a little tougher. We had to deal with a little bit more of adversity. Um, we were allowed to be coached harder, and it allowed you to develop thick skin. And I say this often. Um, if I could deal with Ralph Friedgen, I can deal with anyone. And I understand now as a man what he was doing and his style of motivation for me. Now, let make no mistake, his style wasn't that way with everyone, you know, but he knew what would motivate me. He knew that lighting a fire up under my belly would be to question me. And I was always hell bent on proving people wrong. So, you know, that kind of style of coaching is a little extinct at this point in time. Um, but make no mistake, if I would have had the amount of resources that are available now, you know, we could be talking about a completely different narrative.
I got one more for you, and you kind of go through it from an athlete's perspective. The amount of injuries you did
Hmm.
after such a high sophomore season. Now, 20 years, 15 years later, how do you handle maybe that feeling of kind of lost potential, or what do you go through in your mind, and how is that growth for you to kind of coming to accept the fact that, things just didn't shape out for whatever reason. I mean, you obviously had success, but the ways that it could have looked like it would have been, after your
Hmm.
sophomore season.
You know, I'm a firm believer that things happen for a reason. Um, and if you know me and you know this about me, even to this day, the only thing that matters to me is the guys that suited up with me. They'll tell you they will want nobody else dotting that I but me. That amount of respect, that amount of admiration, even to this day, you never know what your journey does for other people. You never know how you impact other people and how you handle adversity. And I'm finding out now, 20 years later, that my teammates looked up to me in ways that I never thought they did because of the things that I was able to endure because of what they watched me go through, how they watched me fight, and how they watched me never quit. You know, so that alone is what helps me sleep at night and puts a smile on my face. To know that the guys that I battled with, they would rather have nobody else but me.
I think that's a pretty powerful thing, man, and we appreciate you sharing some of that and sharing the stories you did.
I appreciate this time. I appreciate you allowing me to tell a little bit of my story and give people a little bit more insight into Bruce Perry. You know, we all sacrifice a lot for this university. We all sacrifice a lot for the opportunity to wear the red, black, and yellow and white. We all sacrifice a lot, and to be able to tell a piece of my story that not a lot of people know. Um, there's so many things you don't know. Like, I think I may have about 16 records in the record books. Like, these are things that I'm just finding out to this day because it wasn't important to me. I wasn't that type of guy. You know, what was important to me was the product that I put out on the field, and guys knowing that I was willing to go out on my shield for them. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys giving me the platform.